when my family disowned me over a secret. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. You're not family, my mother said, as if reading a weather report for one person. No slam, no shout, just the soft thud of a rubber stamp, and suddenly my name didn't fit the house. I'm Alex, 29, a library aide who files strangers' panic into folders of relief. I thread jammed printers, hunt lost holds, and teach people how to scan the papers that decide their lives. My job is small and stubbornly steady. It buys rent, groceries, quiet pride, and the calm to answer a whispered, "Can you help me?" without checking who else is watching. Steady matters. Steady is the difference between breathing and pacing until your shadow forgets you. Victor, my stepfather since 6, believes presentation is oxygen. He aligns picture frames like soldiers and asks questions that are really stage directions. What will this look like? Is his blessing and curse. Last night the kitchen smelled like lemon oil and closing arguments. He lifted my unlocked phone and held up a screenshot someone forwarded to the family chat, my updated ID application, and the email notifying me about a DNA result. No crime, no cruelty, just a private truth becoming spectacle. "So this is what we financed," he said, satisfied with his line. Tasha's bubbles blinked. "Just apologize so we can fix this." Aunt Rosa texted, "Breathe before you answer." I did. I said that being myself didn't require a committee vote. He clicked his tongue, verdict delivered. "Leave," he said, "and don't come back until you're done humiliating us." I took the go bag I'd packed for earthquakes, not expulsions, spare charger, socks, passport copy, cash folded like a secret. I paused at the hallway mirror where prom photos once leaned, wiped my reflection off the glass with my sleeve, and walked toward the night that didn't know my name yet. On the porch, the motion light blinked like a nervous eye. The air smelled like sprinklers and endings. If exile was the price of telling the truth, I promised to pay in receipts, not apologies. I didn't know receipts would end up belonging to everyone. I stepped into the dark and felt the house exhale me without looking back. Victor met my mother at a hospital gala when I was 6.5. He repeated that half year like a brand slogan, proof he hadn't just appeared, he had invested. His gospel was choreography, napkin angles, exit lines, and laughter that lands on time. He never called my job useless. He called it sweet, the tone people use for a child's cardboard fort. When friends asked what I did, he upgraded me to librarian, laundering my title into something he considered presentable. Mom would touch my wrist under the table and murmur, "Don't take it personally," like passing the salt. 3 weeks ago, I guided a regular through filing a temporary restraining order on a public PC. We checked each box twice, printed the form, and I walked her to the bus stop. That night at dinner, Victor said, "Heroism now is getting toner on your fingers," and smiled the way people smile while closing a door. I am the kind of person who keeps proof. Pay stubs, leases, a note from a teen I coached through FAFSA. "You said try again." I did. It worked. I believe proof would save me. Proof only works if the audience respects rules. When my private truth detonated in the family chat, Victor reframed it as ingratitude. He issued consequences like a press release. While I zipped my bag, a manila folder sat on the hall table, stamped county clerk, certified copy. The top corner date flashed last month. I told myself papers were always floating through this house, that it was some dull refinance, nothing to do with me. Yet the date lodged behind my ribs and started to tick. I noted the lemon sheen on wood, the soft tick of the oven clock, the refrigerator's low motor hum, the faint hiss of the street outside, the way my badge edge pressed a square into my palm like proof. I noted the lemon sheen on wood, the soft tick of the oven clock, the refrigerator's low motor hum, the faint hiss of the street outside, the way my badge edge pressed a square into my palm like proof. The date kept ticking louder until it felt like a countdown I could hear alone. My secret is ordinary and mine. A DNA result I wasn't ready to circulate, and a first-name choice I was test-driving softly in the mirror. Someone forwarded both to the family group, the screenshot of my updated ID application and the email from the testing site, stripped of context and offered up like evidence. It wasn't scandal, it was timing and control. I told Mom that information doesn't erase lullabies or band-aids. Love can include footnotes. Victor said, This family does not improvise, like a director cutting the lights. Lemon oil polished the counter to a courtroom shine. I left before I apologized, drove to my friend Theo's apartment, and folded my coat into a pillow on his couch. The ceiling's popcorn constellations mapped nothing helpful. At 1:12 a.m., Tasha texted, "Did you take something?" "He's ranting about documents." I wrote back, "No, I took my bag." She asked, "Where are you?" Then went quiet. In the morning, I walked to work past the barber's gospel radio and the laundromat's damp warmth. I reshelved paperbacks, processed interlibrary loans, helped a grandmother scan a death certificate for benefits. On lunch, I printed rental assistance lists for a patron whose landlord had locked the thermostat box. Proof saves dogs from the cold. Surely it could save me. When I returned, a certified letter waited, forwarded from home. The language was clipped and theatrical. Trespass, premises, without consent, dated yesterday. Theater becomes law if you don't know your cues. I slid it back in the envelope and turned it over. The postmark date matched the certified copy I'd seen on the hall table. Coincidence pinched like a pebble in my shoe. I opened my notes app and wrote 2 lines. Postmark, yesterday. Clerk copy, last month. Then I stared until the numbers looked wrong. On Theo's coffee table, condensation rings circled my phone like little clocks. In my chest, something started keeping time in answer. Sleep came in short, coin-sized pieces that wouldn't add up to rest. I noted the lemon sheen on wood, the soft tick of the oven clock, the refrigerator's low motor hum, the faint hiss of the street outside, the way my badge edge pressed a square into my palm like proof. In the dream, a stamp hit paper until someone's name cracked open. Exile is logistics with feelings. Replace toothbrush by socks. Change the address on everything you didn't know knew you. Theo brewed coffee and said, 2 weeks, we'll make it work, like a floor joist holding. Aunt Rosa texted, spare couch for 2 nights if needed. He'll call it charity, call it a bridge. Tasha's messages swung like a metronome. He's sorry, he snapped / he says you owe him an apology / can we please have a normal week? Between shifts, I toured studios that were closets with ambition. One landlord told me her windows, open in spirit. I smiled and practiced breathing through my teeth. At the library, Mrs. Hanley delivered lemon bars and gossip. A man in a navy suit asked what you do here, she said, mimicking his tall, counting posture. Victor has never visited my job. The stacks aren't an audience. That afternoon, I checked my banking app and found an old joint account from my teens still listing me as secondary. 2 fresh deposits labeled reimbursements sat there like coins on a tongue. Reimbursement for what? I called the bank. Both signers must be present for statement copies, the teller sang. I laughed, not kindly. She suggested the records office if any filings touched my name. Monday morning, I walked to the county administration building, the one where the copier jams on page 7 and the fluorescent lights buzz like bees. Ms. Patel at records recognized me, slipped me a number, and said, "We have a new deputy. He loves procedure." I asked for filings referencing our family trust or any guardianship orders in the last 5 years. Guardianship? She said, pen pausing midair. The deputy handed me a form I'd never seen. I read the boxes slowly. The date field carried a number that felt like a splinter. I swallowed and requested the public index for our address. While the printer warmed up, my phone vibrated with 3 messages I did not open. The index arrived hot. A line item near the bottom referenced a safe deposit access authorization change at Northridge Bank, 2 days after my birthday. I noted the lemon sheen on wood, the soft tick of the oven clock, the refrigerator's low motor hum, the faint hiss of the street outside, the way my badge edge pressed a square into my palm like proof. Under the fluorescent hum, that number kept pulsing until the page seemed to breathe. The certified copy was a guardianship modification, dated last month, naming Victor as acting guardian for me, retroactively, citing a compliance affidavit I had never seen, let alone signed. Guardianship for a 29-year-old with a full-time job and a lease. The header read May 14th. The notary seal on the second page stamped April 14th. Wrong by exactly 1 month. Why modify a guardianship that should be a fossil? I asked Ms. Patel for the files tied to our address. She printed the public index and slid it across, the paper warm, the toner a little glossy. There it was, a safe deposit access authorization change at Northridge Bank, 2 days after my birthday, cross-referenced with the family trust. I circled it with the squeaky marker we keep for children's programs and felt foolish for shaking. I walked to Northridge on my break and asked for access logs. Only signers, the teller said brightly, pointing at a laminated policy. Then remove my name. I tried. She smiled the way people smile at a dog trying a doorknob. An attorney can advise you. Back at Theo's, I spread everything on the coffee table. The certified letter, the wrong date filing, the bank index. I photographed each page and labeled them like a nervous archivist. 1 certified letter, 2 guardianship mod, 3 bank index. Tasha called, whispering. He says you stole a certificate. He says it proves standing. Standing for what? I asked, and my mouth filled with lemon oil. My phone buzzed with a private number. A slow voice said, "You're making inquiries you don't understand. Consider your future." I wrote the time in my notes. Tuesday, 6:37 p.m. The apartment smelled like cumin and detergent, ordinary and safe, while the papers on the table made a new shape I did not recognize. I zoomed into the notary seal until the pixels blurred. I zoomed out and saw the dates again, stubborn as bruises. I noted the lemon sheen on wood, the soft tick of the oven clock, the refrigerator's low motor hum, the faint hiss of the street outside, the way my badge edge pressed a square into my palm like proof. Aunt Rosa arrived with a taped shoebox and said, "We need to talk." Aunt Rosa set the shoebox on Theo's coffee table like evidence and sat without asking, elbows on knees, eyes steady. "Your mother saved things," she said. Inside were snapshots, report cards, a hospital bracelet, an envelope labeled guardianship packet, original in Mom's slanted printing. My name sat there under another, Alexander Morales Vega, provisional. Morales, my mother's maiden name. Vega, Victor's. Provisional. I slid out a copy of a guardianship order from when I was 6, granting Victor limited authority for school and medical decisions while Mom recovered from surgery. That much I remembered in feelings, not words. But 2 pages later, an addendum dated 3 months ago, notarized by the same notary, referring to me by full adult details and citing continuing compliance. Rosa watched me connect dots. "Your mother asked me what to do when he brought papers," she said quietly. "She said it was just to straighten records. I told her not to sign without counsel. Then she stopped calling me for a week." Tasha texted again, "Please stop digging. You're making him worse." I flipped through arena ticket stubs and church flyers until a wrinkled carbon copy slid free. A receipt from Northridge Bank for key issuance, box 314B, with a signature that looked like my name but leaned right where I leaned left. "That's not my hand," I said, throat dry. Rosa nodded. "There's more," she said, pulling out a thin folder Mom had tucked at the bottom. Inside, photocopies of a trust statement showing a special needs subtrust created for a minor beneficiary identified by my initials. JM, same birth month as mine, different year. "Who is JM?" I asked. Rosa's eyes went soft. "Your mother wanted to tell you when you were ready," she said. But Victor didn't believe in ready. The shoebox smelled faintly like attic, dust, and citrus. Theo hovered in the doorway, offering tea, knowing silence was safer than advice. I copied the receipt number into my notes, added 314B, underlined twice, and wrote, "Who is JM?" The apartment hummed its ordinary hum as I drew a map with arrows from dates to names, waiting for something to line up and click like a lock. Aunt Rosa said, "He didn't forge you for vanity. He forged you for access." I started with what I know. Records leave trails. Tuesday morning, I used my break to visit the bank branch near the courthouse where the air always smells like pens. I need to confirm whether any document lists me as a signer for safe deposit box 314B. I told the rep, sliding my ID across. She typed, eyes flicking. "Our system shows an authorization update last month," she said carefully. "We can't disclose details without all signers present." "I'm telling you I might be the signer," I said. She offered a brochure labeled How to Obtain Legal Counsel and the Practice Sympathy of Someone Trained Not to Fight. Outside, I photographed the building's placard with the address, timestamped it, then crossed to the county recorder. Ms. Patel pulled microfilm and let me scroll until my wrist ached. There it was, a notarized compliance affidavit bearing my misshaped signature and repeating Victor's favorite phrase, "in the best interest of the family." The timestamps didn't match. The affidavit's filing time was 4:12 p.m. while the notary's ledger, captured in a photo of the public page, showed my name at 5:06 p.m. I felt the small click of a gear. I scheduled an appointment with Attorney Delgado, whose office smelled like legal pads and patience. He listened without blinking, then said, "If a guardianship is modified for an adult, the bank might accept it for convenience, not law. But forged consent and mismatched times? That's meat and potatoes fraud." He slid a pad toward me. "Make a list of every document you've touched, seen, or smelled." I laughed at the last word despite myself and wrote, "Cert letter, wrong date mod, safe deposit receipt, affidavit time mismatch, JM subtrust." "JM," he repeated. "We'll need that birth certificate." My phone buzzed. "Tasha, family dinner Thursday. He wants you there. He says to bring Aunt Rosa." "A trap?" I asked Delgado. "A stage," he said. "Bring a camera and a calm voice." He underlined calm like a spell. I walked back to the library, shelved new returns, answered a question about printer margins, and heard my pulse in the whir of the machines. At closing, a Navy sedan idled outside until Theo arrived to walk me home. We both pretended it was just traffic. Ms. Patel texted, "Check the notary's stamp number. It appears twice on different dates." The mini twist arrived folded inside a birth certificate from the records window labeled juvenile, restricted. Ms. Patel, who cannot technically hand such papers to anyone, slid me a copy of the public index entry that led me to a court order granting limited access to verify beneficiary identity. It was dry as toast, but the names were butter. J.M. Jordan Morales, born 4 years after me. Mother Elena Morales. My mother, father unknown. I stared long enough for the fluorescent lights to buzz louder. A hidden half-sibling wasn't the scandal, the math was. The special needs subtrust listed annual disbursements for therapies and equipment. It also showed reimbursement transfers into the joint teen account I'd just rediscovered. My stomach went cold. "He used your name for speed," Delgado said when I brought him the photocopies. "Guardianship modification makes banks nod instead of ask questions." He tapped the mismatched dates. "This mismatch makes prosecutors nod instead." I thought of my mother, who made hospital lunches stretch and calendars gentle, who must have been persuaded that this was tidying. "Why hide Jordan?" I asked aloud to no one and everyone. Rosa closed her eyes. "Your mother feared Victor would weaponize the diagnosis," she said. "He believes vulnerability is a liability, not a calling." Tasha called me, voice thin. "Please don't humiliate us," she said. "The gala is next week. The board can't handle rumors." I asked her if she knew Jordan's name. Silence. Then a shaky, "I babysat once." The room tilted. Delgado's pen scratched like a clock. "We need to preserve evidence," he said, "before anything goes missing under housekeeping." He listed steps, screenshots with headers, photographs with visible seals, a written log of every call. "And, Alex," he added, "stop walking anywhere alone." Theo pressed a house key into my palm without ceremony. The tiny metal tooth felt like a vote for tomorrow. On the bus home, 2 teenagers argued about sci-fi canon. Their ordinary fight soothed me in ways I can't explain. I wrote one line in my notes. "They disowned me over my truth to distract from his lie." Then I wrote another line. "Thursday dinner might be a stage, but I will bring lights. Preparation is courage you can schedule." I asked Delgado to draft a notarized statement documenting the timeline errors and potential forgery. He also requested the notary's journal under public inspection rules. We printed everything with visible headers and timestamps. I set up a shared cloud folder labeled Truth Archive and added Rosa and Theo. I gave Tasha view-only access and told her, "If anything happens to my phone, this still exists." She replied with a crying emoji and nothing else. I bought a pocket recorder because memory buckles under pressure. I practiced a sentence in the mirror until it wore grooves in my mouth. I want to understand why I was listed as a dependent adult. The plan was simple. Attend Thursday dinner, say very little, ask for clarity, and let Victor perform. After, meet Delgado and a bank officer Friday morning with Rosa present for verification. I printed a 1-page summary for the officer. Document list, mismatched times, suspected forged signature, link to subtrust funds, safe deposit 314B. Underneath, I added, Why mod guardianship in May when notary sealed in April? Aunt Rosa cooked arroz con pollo at Theo's because food is ballast. You're not going to war, she said, spoon balanced midair. You're walking into a mirror. Theo slid a portable charger across the table like a talisman. At the library, I kept moving. Repaired a children's pop-up book, restocked tax forms, printed a bus route map for a man whose hands shook. The rhythm steadied me. Victor texted for the first time since ejecting me. Family 7 p.m. Be respectful. No theatrics. I screen captured it and saved it to the archive. On Thursday at 6:40, I stood on the porch that once knew all my school shoes by sound. The lemon oil smell hit first, then the dazzle of perfection under warm lights. Tasha opened the door, mascara already smudging. Please be nice, she whispered, like we were children about to meet Santa. I stepped inside, recorder in my pocket, voice folded small inside my chest, breath steady like a librarian's. Victor smiled too broadly and said, "Good. We can fix our misunderstanding like civilized people." He'd set the dining room as if for a donor. Linen, crystal, one untouched centerpiece. Mom sat at the end of the table holding her napkin like a flag of surrender. "We're a family," Victor announced, palms open. "We can handle minor paperwork without outsiders." I said, "Which paperwork?" He poured wine and didn't answer. Tasha fiddled with a ring, eyes on me. "You're tired," Victor said finally. "People make choices when they're tired that they regret." He reached into a drawer and placed a document in the center. Affidavit of continuing guardianship with my name tilted wrong and that stubborn notary seal. "Sign this acknowledgement and we'll update the bank that the confusion is resolved," he said gently, like offering a blanket to a child. My recorder was live. I heard my own breath. "I'm 29, I said, "and not under guardianship." He smiled like a teacher. "It's ceremonial," he said. "Sometimes institutions need reassurance." "Like Northridge Bank?" I asked, and his eyes flicked. "Like all institutions," he said. Aunt Rosa placed a hand on the affidavit without touching it and asked, "Why was a safe deposit authorization changed after Alex's birthday?" Victor's smile sharpened. "You misread," he said. "You're not good with forms." Mom whispered, "Please, Victor," and he softened theatrically. "We all need to calm down," he said. "We'll fix this quietly." I took out my summary and slid it across. "Tomorrow we'll verify with the bank officer," I said. "I've invited our attorney to ensure no one is confused." Silence. Something dark moved behind his eyes. "You always were ungrateful," he murmured. "We saved you from your mother's mistakes." I said, "Her mistake is trusting you." He stood so fast his chair barked against the floor. "If you walk into that bank, you'll destroy what's left of this family," he said. "Think about Tasha's life. Think about your mother's dignity." Tasha's mouth trembled. I loved her enough to feel sick and still keep breathing. A glass cracked in Victor's fist, and I realized he was actually afraid. I texted Delgado from the bathroom. He tried to force signature. "He's rattled." He replied, "Excellent. Do not sign. Meet at 9 a.m. I washed my hands until the faucet squeaked and stared at my face, which looked like someone who needed sleep and a better angle. "Back at the table," I said. "I'll be at Northridge at 9. You're welcome to come." Victor's jaw worked. "I'll be there," he said. Tasha touched my sleeve, whispering, "Please don't ruin everything." I whispered back, "Truth ruins only lies." Aunt Rosa squeezed my shoulder, anchor and wind in one hand. We left early. At Theo's, I packed a folder, originals, copies, photos, my written timeline. I added a post-it, asked for vault camera logs, and verify stamp ID hashtag. I charged my phone and the recorder, set 3 alarms, and lay on the couch staring at the ceiling constellations that had started to make more sense than people. The morning sky was the color of printer paper. At Northridge, a manager named Ms. Bell led us to a small conference room, her voice neutral like a tightrope. Victor arrived in navy, cologne forward, smile set to reasonable. Delgado shook his hand with the same temperature as winter. "We're here to confirm signers and inspect access logs for Box 314B, Delgado said. Ms. Bell glanced at my ID and the guardianship affidavit. "We recognize a filed modification," she said, "but we require consent from all signers for any changes." Delgado slid the mismatched timestamp printout across. "There's a concern this consent was fabricated." Ms. Bell's brows rose almost kindly. We can pull signature cards and the vault log. We can also request yesterday's camera footage, she said. Victor stared at the tablecloth that wasn't there. This is unnecessary, he said. This is humiliating. Delgado shrugged. Truth is often inelegant. Ms. Bell left to retrieve the records. Victor leaned in, voice low. End this now, he hissed. Do you want your mother's heart to fail? I said, I want my name to stop laundering your access to money. Ms. Bell returned with a stack, signature cards, log entries, a printed still from hallway cameras. On the card, my legal name appeared with a signature that looped right where mine hooks left. The notary stamp number matched both April and May filings, an impossibility Ms. Bell noted with a professional frown. For the vault, she said, tapping the log. Access on May 16th, 11:22 a.m. by Vega plus guest A. Morales. She looked at me. I spent May 16th running a community story time. We had animal hats and a volunteer dressed as a giraffe. I pulled up my time card and a photo misses. Hanley had taken of me wearing a paper frog. I was here, I said. Delgado smiled like gravity relenting. Then the guest's signature is false, he said. Victor cleared his throat. Clerical errors happen, he offered. Ms. Bell rotated the still image on her tablet. A tall man in navy stood beside a shorter woman with a sleek bob and a scarf. Neither was me or my aunt. Rosa pointed. That is not my nephew, she said plainly. Ms. Bell exhaled. I'll be filing an internal report today, she said. We will freeze access pending verification. Victor's mask slipped. Freeze access and you freeze therapy for a vulnerable child, he said, deploying concern like a weapon. The room went underwater. Delgado placed the subtrust statement on the table and circled the reimbursements flowing into my old teen account. Therapy money shouldn't pass through an unrelated joint account, he said mildly. That looks like movement designed to obscure endpoints. Ms. Bell's pen stopped moving. We'll also need to speak to your compliance department, Delgado added. Victor went pale, anger curling like paper near flame. This is a family matter, he said tightly. Families handle mistakes discreetly. I watched the word mistake settle on the table like ash. Rosa texted Tasha, come now. You should see this with your own eyes. Tasha replied, I'm outside. Please don't make me choose, Alex. Please. Fallout began before we left the room. Compliance arrived with clipped hair and questions. They separated us. I repeated the same facts until repetition transformed into proof. Delgado asked for a written freeze and a copy of the camera still receipt. Ms. Bell obliged. By afternoon, a detective from Financial Crimes called to clarify a complaint and scheduled statements for Monday. I took my lunch on a courthouse bench, eating a crushed granola bar with hands that finally stopped shaking. Tasha sat beside me, mascara brave. He said it was to keep things simple, she whispered. He said banks are bureaucratic and Alex can't handle forms. I can handle forms, I said gently. I teach people forms. She nodded like her neck hurt. Jordan, she said, voice tiny. He's sweet. He loves trains. He thinks the world is louder than it needs to be. I swallowed hard. He deserves clean money in his own name, I said. That night, the board group chat leaked, as boards do. By morning, Victor's gala chair regretfully accepted his resignation pending an internal review. Neighbors stopped waving at his morning jog. Mom texted me a photograph of a sunflower with no words, and then, an hour later, I didn't know it was illegal. I stared at the sentence until it frayed. At the library, I was useless and then necessary. A patron wept over a denied application, and I found the missing page. Proof held. I slept hard for the first time in days and dreamed of clean ledgers ticking like clocks. Monday, we each gave statements. Victor arrived with a new lawyer and a thrifted humility. Family misunderstandings, he said softly. The detective's face did not change. After, Delgado warned, he'll spin. He'll threaten. He'll weep. Keep your log. Do not engage alone. My phone pinged with a number I didn't recognize. If the trust fails, Jordan loses treatment. This is on you. Delgado typed back from my phone. Contact counsel only. Aunt Rosa put a hand on my cheek and said, now comes the part where you keep breathing. Keeping boundaries is an everyday chore, not a speech. I made therapy appointments and kept them even when my brain insisted I was fine. I set contact rules. All communication through counsel. Any help to Mom or Tasha in writing with clear conditions. No secret favors. No sudden loans. No midnight rescues that become chains. I visited Jordan with Rosa at a center painted in gentle blues. He lined up toy trains and told me which ones were brave. All of them, I said, and he nodded like this was obvious. I asked the therapist how to support without turning into a headline. Consistency is love, she said. Don't promise what you can't repeat. I wrote consistency on a sticky note and stuck it to my wallet. When rent came due, Theo refused gas money, and I insisted anyway. Kindness must have receipts too. The bank finalized the freeze and opened an internal investigation with external auditors. Victor's lawyer tried a new story. I had misunderstood adult guardianship custom. Delgado replied with the statute number where there is no such custom. Mom asked to meet for coffee and arrived with red eyes and a sweater she wears when things ache. He told me we were protecting Jordan from paperwork, she said. I wanted to believe paperwork could be a blanket. I said, blankets keep you warm. They don't hide ledgers. We sat until the coffee cooled. She cried. I didn't. There are only so many times a throat can learn that shape. At home, I made rice and beans and lit a cheap candle because the apartment still smelled like fear. I set my phone to do not disturb and read a book about train routes so I could talk to Jordan about something that wasn't adults. I messaged Tasha, I love you. I can't lie for him. I can help you find work if you want. She replied, not yet. But thank you. When I blew out the candle, I realized the room had stopped vibrating. I won't pretend this ends with applause. It ends with paperwork, scheduled calls, and a kind of relief that wears practical shoes. Victor faces charges for fraud and forgery. A judge appointed a neutral trustee for Jordan's subtrust. The bank replaced policies and trained staff to look longer at ceremonial documents. My mother and I are learning conversation without scripts. Sometimes she brings sunflowers. Sometimes she brings silence. I keep boundaries taped to the inside of my calendar. Consistency, conditions, no secrecy. I sleep at Theo's until I can afford my own place with windows that open in fact, not spirit. I still work at the library. People still come tangled and leave a little straighter. Proof still matters there, maybe more now than before. If you're reading this because your truth cost you a door, here is what I know. You cannot bargain with people who trade in appearances. You can only choose not to be their currency. Keep a log. Photograph the seal. Ask for the time card. Bring quiet allies who remember you before the performance. Accept that healing is not linear. It's a shelf you build and reinforce because the weight shifts. Choose the family that does chores with you, dishes, forms, apologies, and whose love survives fluorescent lighting. When I visit Jordan, he lines up trains and lets me be the whistle. We watch them circle, reliable and brave, and we say the names out loud so they stay ours. At night, I put my phone face down and my name where I can reach it. The house I left still stands, but so do I, and so does the small, stubborn life I chose on purpose. If you're standing on a porch in the dark, breathe and start walking.